There is an idea that often comforts, but also imprisons, the belief that everything will work out. We say this to soothe the pain, to fill the silence, to escape the feeling of helplessness. But do we really believe it deep down? Or do we use this phrase as a shield against fear? There is a blind spot in this optimism, a point where hope stops being strength and becomes anesthesia. And it is at this point that everything begins to disconnect. Napoleon Hill observed something that few have had the courage to say. Believing that everything will work out is not enough. It is not just about thinking positively. It is about thinking with direction, with purpose, with presence. Hill did not speak of hope. He spoke of creation, of thought as a living seed, of frequency as a creative force. He knew that the universe does not respond to what we say out loud, but to what we sustain in the silent field of our vibration. There are those who deeply desire a new path, but live trapped in the old identity. They vibrate fear while repeating courage. They feel absence while affirming abundance, and the universe, in its precision, responds not to words, but to the real vibration behind them. Neville Goddard said that the mind needs to inhabit the final state of what it desires, not just visualize it, inhabit it, feel it as if it already is, be it before seeing it. And here is the key. The mind that creates is not the hopeful mind. It is the mind that has decided, that aligns itself internally with what it wishes to manifest, not by force, but by vibrational truth. Because when there is truth, there is coherence. And when there is coherence, there is scope. And when there is scope, the impossible begins to reorganize itself. But there is a subtle blockage that needs to be revealed. It is the unconscious voice that says, "It will work out," while vibrating, "I am not enough." This voice does not shout. It whispers. And the universe listens. It listens to this low frequency. Even if on the outside everything seems positive, it is this dissonance that sabotages. It is this incoherence that prevents manifestation. It is not the lack of faith. It is the lack of harmony between what is said, what is felt, and what is sustained. That is why correct thinking is not the one that twists. It is the one that shapes. It is the one that builds the space for new life internally. Hill knew it. Goddard confirmed it. And now you are starting to remember. It is not about believing that everything will work out. It is about thinking as if it were already right and living from there, because it is in that place that everything begins to respond. Beware of emotional optimism that numbs your strength of action. It is easy to let yourself be lulled by the comfort of thinking that everything will work out. So easy that sometimes this thought ceases to be a creative impulse and becomes a silent trap, a spiritual anesthesia that paralyzes action. You feel that you are at peace, but in fact, you are asleep. You believe that you are trusting, but you are only waiting. And waiting, when it is not active, when it is not accompanied by a coherent vibration, becomes disguised surrender. Optimism, when not rooted in a deep decision, becomes a crutch, a disguise. It intoxicates the mind with vague promises, but does not move the soul towards what needs to be done. And that is when the strength begins to be lost. Not because there is a lack of faith, but because there is a lack of structure. Not because you do not want to change, but because your disconnected optimism prevents you from realizing what still needs to be transformed. Napoleon Hill did not preach blind optimism. He spoke of a defined purpose, of vibrational decision, of thought as a seed that needs to be watered with emotion and action. Hill knew that repeating phrases without aligning the body, mind, and heart was useless, because the universe does not move by words. It moves by fields, and the field does not respond to desire. It responds to frequency. When optimism becomes too emotional, it conflicts with reality. You feel that everything is fine, but the results do not appear. You wait for signs, but the signs do not come, because the field is divided. A part of you wants. The other part, unconsciously, is still. It is numb. It is waiting for something to happen before moving. But the universe doesn't work that way. It needs to feel your internal movement before moving the external one. That's why true optimism doesn't numb. It activates. It awakens. It drives you to act with presence, even without guarantees. It connects you with an internal truth that doesn't need to be proven. It only needs to be sustained. And this sustenance, day after day, is what builds the new. Not in a hurry, not with magic, but with a living frequency. A frequency that vibrates from the inside out, with coherence between what you feel, what you think, and what you do. Invisible error, confusing hope with frequency. Hope may seem like light, but it is often just an illusion that postpones the now. It disguises itself as faith, but vibrates absence. Waiting is placing desire in the future, and everything that is placed in the future, energetically, is distanced from the present. Hope, when not anchored in vibrational action, creates distance. You desire, but wait. You miss, but try to convince yourself. You project, but do not inhabit. And the universe, in its vibrational precision, does not understand words. It understands frequencies. It does not matter what you want. What matters is what you are vibrating now. And if you are vibrating hope, you are telling the field that it is not yet, that it is still missing, that it still needs to happen. And this still turns into a cycle that never closes, a promise that is never fulfilled, a reality that never arrives. Napoleon Hill never confused hope with creation. He spoke of thought as a generating force, of feeling as structure, of purpose as a field of action. For him, waiting was passive, creating was active. And creating required more than just wishing. It required assuming, living the end, as Neville Goddard would say, inhabiting, in your vibration, the state of what already is, even if nothing around you has changed yet. This is where many people fail, because they believe they are being positive, when in fact they are just being patient. And there is nothing wrong with patience, but it needs to be allied with vibrational presence. Otherwise, it becomes stagnation. Desire needs to be brought into the now. It needs to be felt in the body. It needs to be lived in silence. It needs to be sustained. Hope vibrates the future. Manifestation vibrates the present. And it is only in the present that the field can align. It is only in the now that reality begins to respond. Therefore, the error is not in wishing. It is in waiting, and the cure is not in insisting, it is in inhabiting the vibration of who already is, of who has already become, of who is already at the end, even without having left the beginning. Because it is like this, exactly like this, that everything begins to change. The silent factor that sabotages your frequency, the conflict between desire and identity. There is an invisible space between what you desire and who you believe you are. This space is often filled with doubt, with memories, with old experiences that have left silent marks. You desire a new path, a new life, a new level of reality. But your emotional identity still vibrates the opposite. It still carries the weight of stories that say, it's not possible, it's not for you, you're not capable. This conflict is not shouted, it is felt. It manifests itself in the way you react to compliments, in the way you sabotage your own progress, in the difficulty of maintaining your vibration when something goes wrong, and the universe, with its subtle intelligence, does not respond to your declared desire. It responds to your vibrational identity, to the image you sustain, even without realizing it, to the story you repeat, even in silence. Napoleon Hill understood the depth of this phenomenon. He knew that thought is creative, but only when it is aligned with a coherent identity. When desire encounters an internal image that rejects it, there is noise. And where there is noise, there is no clean frequency. There is no stable magnetic field. There is no clear manifestation. What happens then is repetition. Cycles that return. Situations that repeat themselves. Frustrations that are reborn. You may deeply desire something new, but if deep down, you still see yourself as limited, scarce, wounded, or incapable, the field will reflect that image, because that is the image that is being transmitted. The universe does not respond to your enthusiasm. It responds to your silent truth. And that truth lives in identity. That is why the real work is not just about desiring. It is about rewriting the internal image. It is about rebuilding the frequency with which you see yourself. It is about aligning desire with identity, becoming on the inside what you want to live on the outside, not by force, but by presence, by repetition, by vibrational practice. Because when desire encounters an identity that recognizes it, the field opens, the flow returns, creation happens, not as a miracle, but as a consequence of a new internal coherence. And this coherence changes everything. Why most people fail when they try to think positively. Thinking positively by itself has never been enough, but this idea has spread like a magic formula, repeating nice words, trying to feel good, ignoring fear, avoiding discomfort. But the universe does not move by statements. It moves by coherent vibration. And most people, even with good intentions, fail because they try to use thought as makeup for a misaligned emotion. You can say, "It will work out 1,000 times a day." You can repeat affirmations in front of the mirror, write goals in notebooks, create vision boards. But if your body is vibrating fear, if your emotion is stuck in the frequency of scarcity, if your mind is trying to control reality, nothing happens, because there is a disconnect, a vibrational dissonance between what you say and what you feel. And it is this dissonance that blocks the field. Napoleon Hill never suggested that thinking positively was enough. What he taught was purposeful thinking. Thinking that is born from an inner decision, thought that shapes emotion and directs action. This is different from wishful thinking. This is vibrational construction. This is energetic alignment. Positive thinking, when done without awareness, creates tension because it requires you to deny what you are feeling. It requires you to feign optimism while something inside you is still afraid. And this pretense does not fool the universe. It perceives the real frequency. It perceives the incoherence. It perceives that there is a desire that has not found a vibrational body to sustain it. This is why so many people get frustrated, because they believe they are doing everything right. But deep down, they are just avoiding feeling. They are trying to skip steps. They are forcing themselves to believe without creating internal space for this belief to flourish. And the result is frustration, because the field does not respond to mental effort. It responds to the embodied vibration, the one that comes from within, the one that is coherent, the one that is true. This is why positive thinking only works when it is a reflection of a new emotion, when it is sustained by a body that already feels what it wants to experience, when it is a natural extension of an identity that is already in transformation. Then, yes, the thought becomes creative. Not because it was rehearsed, but because it is real, and the real manifests. Mental model. The truth you assume shapes the reality you create. The mind does not just observe the world. It shapes, it organizes, it transmits silent signals to the surrounding field. And each thought, sustained with emotion, becomes a vibrational instruction, an energetic message that tells the universe, "This is how I see. This is how I am. This is how I choose to live." Therefore, what you assume as truth, even if silently, begins to take shape in your reality. Napoleon Hill did not only teach about goals and success, he spoke of inner conviction, of a truth assumed with such presence that it becomes unshakable. Because when a truth is assumed with the body, with the mind, and with the heart, it begins to become visible, not as magic, but as a vibrational consequence. You begin to walk differently, think differently, react differently, and the world responds. Neville Goddard called this living the end, feeling as if it were already there, inhabiting the desired state with such internal fidelity that the entire body begins to believe it. And the universe, faced with this vibrational conviction, reorganizes itself because it is no longer faced with a desire. It is faced with an identity, a consistent frequency, an energetic certainty that does not wait for proof to believe, that it already is, even without evidence. This assumed truth is not shouted. It does not need to be explained. It does not require justifications, because it vibrates. It manifests itself in silence, in small gestures, in new choices, in a calm that did not exist before. And when the universe finds this kind of coherence, it bends, it cooperates, it flows. You do not need to convince anyone, not even yourself. You only need to decide what you will accept as truth, not just by saying it, but in the vibration that you sustain in your daily life, in the emotion that you cultivate, in the identity that you begin to reinforce. Because in the end, it is not what you want that creates your life. It's what you believe yourself to be. It's what you've already begun to vibrate. It's what you've already silently become. And that transforms everything. The trap of silent doubt. Doubt does not always present itself as obvious resistance. Sometimes it comes as an almost imperceptible whisper, a question hidden behind the statement. You say it will work out, but immediately afterwards, without realizing it, you think, will it? This small break in frequency, this micro-conflict between what you say and what you feel, has an immense weight in the vibrational field. Because the universe does not respond to the sentence you say, it responds to the vibration that you sustain right after it. This doubt does not have to be rational. It can be a remnant of old stories. It can be the legacy of past experiences that have not yet been dissolved. It can be a fear that you do not name, but that vibrates deep down. And until this vibration is welcomed and transformed, it will continue to interfere. It will continue to weaken the coherence of the field, because there is no creation where there is noise. And doubt is a subtle but powerful noise. Napoleon Hill spoke about the importance of firm faith, of thinking maintained with a defined purpose. But he knew that this faith was not blind. It was built. It was sustained. It required vigilance. Because the mind, by default, tends toward fear. It tends toward the old. It tends to doubt. And doubt, even when small, has the power to delay or distort manifestation. The problem is not doubting. The problem is living in vibrational conflict without realizing it. It is saying one thing and feeling another. It is projecting confidence and feeding insecurity. It is trying to move forward with one foot still stuck in the past. The mind says yes. The body vibrates no. And in that space between yes and no, the field does not move. It waits. It pauses. It remains in suspension. That is why the deepest work is not to insist on positive thinking. It is to dissolve the silent doubt. It is to welcome the part of you that still does not believe, not to repress it, but to integrate, to heal, to transform. Because when doubt is acknowledged and no longer fed, it loses its strength, and the field then begins to respond with more clarity. The certainty that creates realities does not need to be blatant. It needs to be clean, coherent, peaceful. And this inner peace only arises when thought and emotion walk together, when what you declare finds support in what you feel, and what you feel supports what you do. This internal alignment dissolves doubt, and when doubt dissolves, the field flows. Reality approaches. The invisible begins to show itself, because now there is no more noise. There is truth, and truth always has the power to create. Practical exercise to think like Napoleon Hill. Redefine your thoughts through your dominant emotion. It all starts with what you feel on a recurring basis. Not with what you think occasionally, but with the emotion that constantly vibrates deep within you. This emotion, almost always silent, is the true axis of your vibrational field. It is what organizes your thoughts, your decisions, and your way of interpreting reality. Therefore, thinking like Napoleon Hill is not just about adopting catchy phrases. It is about learning to invert the logic of internal creation. It is about using emotion to shape thought, and not the other way around. Hill believed in the power of emotional repetition with direction. It is not enough to repeat an idea if the body is still tuned to another frequency. The mind, without the support of the heart and physical sensation, becomes fragile. Therefore, the exercise here is simple in appearance, but profound in impact. It begins with 3 questions. What do I think repeatedly? What emotion does this thought provoke in me? And what emotion would I choose to sustain if I were already living the end I desire? The first step requires observation, no judgment, just presence. You recognize the pattern that your mind is feeding. You identify the automatic thoughts, those that return when you are distracted, those that arise when nothing is happening. The second stage is more sensitive. You feel what these thoughts generate, in your body, in your breathing, in your posture, because it is this feeling that is emitting the real frequency, not the thought itself, but the emotion that it triggers. And then comes the reversal. You will no longer wait for the right thought to generate the right emotion. You will choose the emotion first. You will deliberately feel the internal state that you would like to experience if you were already living the desired reality. And then, from this state, you will observe that your thoughts begin to reorganize themselves, that your mind begins to generate ideas that are coherent with this new vibration, that your internal field changes. This is vibrational reprogramming in action. It is the practice of energetic coherence. It is thinking as Hill thought, with purpose, with direction, with emotional presence. Because true creative thought is born from an internal state that already recognizes the new as real. And this internal reality creates, sustains, transforms, even before anything outside has changed. Because it is within that everything begins, always. And whenever you start from within, the rest follows. How dopamine tricks you and prevents you from sustaining the frequency. The initial motivation is sweet. It arrives like a breath of possibilities, a silent euphoria, an inner fire that says, now it's going to happen. And for a few days, everything seems different. You wake up more willing. You feel that something has started to move, but soon this flame goes out. The enthusiasm evaporates, and without understanding why, you find yourself returning to the same patterns as before, not because you don't want to change, but because you were tricked by dopamine. Dopamine is a powerful neurotransmitter. It's what drives you in the beginning, what makes the new seem irresistible, what creates the feeling of progress. But it's volatile. It doesn't sustain. It rewards the beginning, but doesn't accompany the process. And that's where many get lost, because they confuse the dopamine spike with vibrational clarity. And when the spike passes, they believe they've lost the connection, that the manifestation won't happen, that they've failed. Napoleon Hill knew that creative thinking is not born from excitement. It is born from sustained decision, from intention that does not depend on mood, from practice that is not abandoned when enthusiasm passes. Because what builds reality is not what you feel for a few days. It is what you sustain even when the feeling disappears. It is what you repeat with presence, even without motivation. Dopamine wants novelty, but the field responds to repetition. Dopamine pushes you to seek more stimulus, but manifestation requires stability, frequency, coherence. That is why those who rely only on initial motivation soon become frustrated, because the body returns to its previous pattern, because the mind begins to doubt, because the absence of immediate pleasure seems like a sign that something is wrong, but it is not. It is at that moment, precisely at that moment of decline, that the true frequency begins to be built. When you continue, even without dopamine, when you choose to maintain the new habit, when you breathe with presence, even without feeling euphoric, because then you begin to re-educate your system, to show the body that it is possible to live in another vibration, to create a new energetic signature. And that signature is what changes everything. Not the fleeting emotion, not the chemical impulse, but the repeated vibrational decision. The one that survives the wavering of motivation. The one that becomes so real that the universe has no choice but to respond. Not because you're excited, but because you're stable. And vibrational stability is what makes the invisible become inevitable. The secret to emotional coherence, not wanting what you deny internally. There is a silent point within you that perhaps has not yet been heard, a point where the contradiction between what you want and what you believe you deserve lies. It is possible to want something strongly and at the same time carry within yourself a feeling that it is not for you. This is the field of emotional incoherence, a field where desire turns into pain, where intention vibrates one thing and emotion vibrates another, and the universe, with its precision, responds to emotion. You say you want abundance, but feel guilty when you think about receiving it. You say you want love, but doubt whether you are worthy of it. You say you want freedom, but fear not knowing what to do with it. These contradictions are not failures. They are unresolved frequencies. They are old stories that still resonate. They are parts of you that are still vibrating the opposite of what you have consciously decided to want. Napoleon Hill said that the mind needs a defined purpose, but this purpose only gains strength when the body recognizes it as true, when emotion sustains thought, when the vibration you emit is one, clear, whole, complete, not fragmented, not conflicting, not divided between wanting and fearing, between asking and rejecting. This emotional coherence is what creates strong fields, fields that magnetize, fields that collapse possibilities into reality. But it does not happen by chance. It is cultivated, it is chosen, it is built through silent practices of reconnection. It is not enough to wish for something. You have to allow your body to feel it as real. You have to dissolve the guilt, fear, and shame that still prevent this permission. And it is not about forcing a new feeling. It is about cleaning the old feeling. It is about releasing the internal ties that impede the flow. It is about creating space for the new vibration to be truly welcomed. When what you desire no longer encounters resistance within you, it begins to move more easily outside of you. Not because you did something different, but because you stopped denying what you said you wanted. This is what emotional coherence is. It is when desire meets a receptive body, an aligned mind, an available heart. And this union creates a field that the universe recognizes as truth. And truth, when it is vibrated with its entirety, manifests itself. Because it no longer needs to be proven. It already is. And everything that already is begins to reveal itself. True story. He only prospered when he stopped trying to believe and started thinking as if he already was. He tried sincerely. He repeated affirmations. He read books. He attended courses. He wrote down goals in detail. But inside, something didn't fit. He still felt like he was trying too hard. It was as if every effort to believe revealed a silent truth. He still didn't believe, and while he kept trying to convince himself, the field around him remained the same. No movement, no response, no real change. It was only when he stopped trying that everything started to change, not because he gave up, but because he understood. He understood that manifestation doesn't happen when you force belief. It happens when you assume your identity, when you stop behaving like someone who is waiting, and start moving like someone who is already living. It was at that point that he exchanged, "I want to believe," for "I already am," and not with words, with vibrational posture. For 33 days, he did only one thing. He woke up every morning, and before any conscious thought, he sat in silence and breathed as someone who had already arrived. He didn't ask, he didn't assert, he just felt. He entered with his entire body into the final state of what he wanted to live. He allowed himself to experience the tranquility of abundance as if it were already there. And it was. Not outside, inside. The first few days were uncomfortable. His mind wanted to go back to doubt, to effort, to the old pattern. But he kept going, silently, without fanfare, without telling anyone. And then something changed. First inside, a new calm, a kind of security that didn't depend on guarantees. Then, outside, an unexpected proposal, an opportunity that seemed impossible, an answer that didn't come because he forced it, but because he sustained it. This story is real, and it's not unique. It's a reflection of what happens when someone stops vibrating like someone who needs to convince, and starts vibrating like someone who already is. Napoleon Hill taught that true faith is built, sustained with intention and practice. And Goddard said, "Live the end. That is the synthesis. Stop trying to believe and start living as if it already is, not by magic, by coherence. Because when the vibration changes, the world responds, because you have already changed, because you have already arrived, even before you leave the place." What nature teaches about vibrational frequency and creative thought. Nothing in nature doubts itself. The seed does not question whether it will blossom. The river does not hesitate to follow its course. The night does not ask permission to fall. Nature operates from an internal code that simply is. It does not ask for guarantees. It does not seek proof. It does not negotiate with time, because there is a vibrational wisdom that governs everything in silence. And this wisdom teaches us more about creation than any book can explain. The seed does not need to visualize the tree. It does not need to repeat affirmations to grow. It simply fulfills its vibrational destiny. It feels the earth. It receives the water. It responds to the light. And it grows, because the code is already in it, because the right vibration has already been planted. What is missing? It does not force. It allows. And this allowing is active. It is presence. It is surrender. It is silent trust in an invisible field that always responds. The human, on the other hand, doubts. Even with the code of creation imprinted in his soul, he interrupts the flow with fear, with distrust, with attempts to control. He wants proof before trusting. He wants signs before sustaining. And in doing so, he loses vibrational coherence. He pushes the flow away. He disconnects from his own source. Nature doesn't do this. It vibrates what it is. And that's why it flourishes effortlessly. It manifests without noise. Napoleon Hill understood this wisdom. When he spoke of a defined purpose, he was talking about aligning oneself with an internal code, of deciding so firmly that doubt dissolves. And this decision is not mental. It is energetic. It is the same one that makes a flower break through concrete, that makes a tree grow even in the desert. It is a vibration that is faithful to what one is, even when nothing outside seems to support it. Looking at nature is remembering that you also carry a code, that there is something inside you that knows, that vibrates, that already is, and that, when sustained with truth, begins to organize the world around it. Not in a hurry, but with precision, because nature does not run. It flows, and everything that flows with truth flourishes, always, without exception, without effort, only through coherence, because the field always responds to those who align themselves with what they were born to be. The fatal mistake of those who try to control the time of manifestation. You feel that you are almost there, that something is about to happen, that the vibration is adjusting. But then, the mind comes in and begins to ask, when? Why hasn't it happened yet? What is missing? And this question, repeated anxiously, begins to deconstruct everything that was silently built. Because the moment you try to control time, you stop trusting the process. And when you stop trusting, you change the frequency. And when you change the frequency, you block the field. The universe does not respond to the clock. It responds to the field, and the field organizes itself through coherence, not urgency. The time of manifestation is not the time of the ego. It is the time of vibrational maturation, a time that respects the internal rhythm, that waits for the stabilization of emotion, for the sustenance of the new identity, for the strengthening of the new vibration. Napoleon Hill said that the correct thought is that which is maintained with persistence and faith. But faith here is not passive waiting. It is active certainty. It is presence. It is sustained vibration, even without evidence. Because what manifests is not how much you want it. It is how much you maintain the frequency of what already is. And this maintenance cannot coexist with anxiety, because anxiety is the daughter of doubt. And doubt destroys the field. When you try to control time, you send a signal to the universe. I still don't trust. I still don't believe. I still need proof. And the universe, sensitive to your vibration, respects your choice. It pauses the movement. It waits for you to stabilize again. It waits for you to return to being the field, not the controller of the field. Manifestation is not an event that you command. It is a response that you attract. And the more you try to speed it up, the more you delay it. Because spiritual time does not bend to haste. It aligns with maturity, with stability, with sustained vibration without anxiety. When you understand this, something changes. You stop measuring time and start measuring your frequency. You stop demanding results and start sustaining states. You abandon haste and embrace depth. And then, the right time arrives. Without warning, without effort, because the right vibration was already there. And when the vibration is right, time simply fulfills what has already been decided in the invisible field of your presence. Why silence can be more powerful than repetition. There comes a time when words become excess, when repetition becomes noise, when trying to convince the mind is in fact a disguised form of resistance. And it is at that moment that silence emerges as a real force. Not the silence of giving up, but the silence of certainty. The silence of someone who no longer needs to repeat because they already feel it, because they already vibrate, because they already are. Repeating affirmations can be useful. It can open paths. It can train the mind. But there comes a point when repeating too much reveals that there is still no conviction, that faith is still being forced, that the field is still waiting for an external response. And it is precisely at that point that the pause becomes medicine. Because silence, when born of presence, communicates a certainty that no words can achieve. Napoleon Hill understood this. He knew that the defined mind does not shout, it sustains. It vibrates with clarity, with direction, with consistency. And this coherent vibration expresses itself best when it no longer needs to be explained, when it does not depend on phrases, when it becomes a living frequency that is transmitted in the look, in the posture, in the breathing, and the universe feels it. Modern studies show that in deep and intentional silence, areas of the brain related to conviction and visualization become more active. The body enters a state of subtle alignment. The mind stops fighting. And that is when creative imagination becomes real, because it is no longer trying. It is just being. It is just allowing the right vibration to find space. Silence, when full of presence, is stronger than any technique. It is the place where the new identity can rest, where the body can integrate what has already begun to vibrate, where the mind can rest from the effort of believing. Because in this state, there is no more resistance. There is only field. There is only flow. There is only truth vibrating with clarity. And it is in this silent clarity that the invisible begins to move. Not by insistence, but by attunement. Because when you silence with intention, the universe listens with precision. It does not listen to your words. It listens to your vibration. And this vibration, when it is free of noise, becomes irresistible. It doesn't ask. It calls. It doesn't force. It invites. It doesn't convince. It transmits. And the world responds. The inversion that changes everything. It's not the world that convinces you, it's you who convinces the world with your vibration. The greatest illusion is to believe that something outside needs to happen for you to finally believe. That money needs to arrive for you to feel prosperous. That love needs to appear for you to feel loved. That healing needs to manifest itself for you to feel safe. But that's inversion. That's delay. That's living as a reflection and not as a source. Because the world doesn't come first. The world responds. It's you who emits the first signal. It's your vibration that says, it's done. Even if the eyes don't see it. Even if reality hasn't changed yet. True creation begins when you stop waiting for proof and start being the proof. When you stop asking for signs and become the sign. And that's not arrogance. It's spiritual maturity. It's the courage to decide who you are before the world confirms it. Napoleon Hill said that everything the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But this belief is not born from logic. It is born from a vibration. And this vibration needs to be so stable, so integral, that the world has no choice but to recognize it, because the field always responds to those who are vibrating as truth, to those who not only desire it, but sustain it, to those who do not seek it, but transmit it. You convince the world not with words, not with force, but with frequency. And frequency is repeated emotion. It is consolidated identity. It is a new way of being that remains even when no one is looking, even when the external has not yet reflected anything. Because in this interval between the invisible and the visible, the field is being generated. And when this field stabilizes, the world begins to bend. It begins to change tone. It begins to offer evidence of what previously seemed impossible, not by magic, but by consequence. Because now, you are no longer asking for permission to believe. You already are. And this already being is what changes everything. Because the universe does not confirm expectations. It confirms identities. And a vibrational identity is choice. It is decision. It is constancy. And when that constancy meets the world mirrors exactly what you have decided to be. Symbolic metaphor, the mirror in the dark room. Imagine a mirror in a completely dark room. You enter the room and smile at the mirror, but nothing happens. No reflection, no image, just darkness. And then, for a moment, you doubt. Is the mirror broken? Does it not work? But the mirror is not broken. It is just silent, because in order to reflect, it needs light. And without light, no mirror can show what is there. That is how the universe is. It is the mirror of your vibration. But without the light of your conscious thought, without the presence of your vibrational identity, it remains dark. It does not move. It does not reflect. It does not respond. And you, on the outside, can even smile. You can even say that you believe. But if you do not turn on the light, nothing will be seen. And turning on the light, in this case, is to vibrate as if it already were. It is to think as if it already was. It is to feel as if you were already living what you want to manifest. Napoleon Hill understood this. He knew that it was not enough to imagine. It was necessary to assume. It was necessary to enter the dark room of doubt and courageously turn on the light of vibrational decision. And when this light is turned on, the mirror responds. It shows who you are. It reflects the field you have created. It replicates the frequency you sustain. Because the universe does not create from nothing. It replicates what you emit. This metaphor is simple, but profound, because it shows that the world around you is not behind. It is just dark, waiting for you to turn on the light. And this light does not come from outside. It comes from within. It comes from your vibrational center. It comes from the clarity with which you sustain the new identity. It comes from the maturity with which you decide who you are. Before any confirmation, you do not need to break the mirror, nor doubt it, nor force the reflection. You only need to turn on the light. And the light is your right thought, your stable emotion, your silent decision. When you sustain this, the mirror reflects. Reality appears. The invisible shows itself, not because it was forced, but because finally it had the light to respond. And all the universe has ever waited for was for you to decide to light up. The mind that creates the path where there is no path yet. There are times when everything around seems stagnant. Nothing moves. No signs. No answers. Reality seems immutable, as if fate were sealed. But it is precisely in these moments that the mind reveals itself as the most powerful force. Not the mind that waits, but the mind that creates. Napoleon Hill said, "Whatever the human mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." This is not just a motivational phrase. It is a statement about the creative power of the mind. When you conceive an idea and believe in it with conviction, you begin to shape the reality around you. The mind becomes the tool that carves the path, even when there is no visible path. Ralph Waldo Emerson complements this vision when he said, "Whatever is coming to you will come through you." This means that the changes we desire do not come from outside, but from within. Transformation begins when we align our thoughts, emotions, and actions with what we wish to manifest. The mind, when focused and aligned, becomes the channel through which the new emerges. The key is not to wait for everything to work out, but to become, mentally and emotionally, living proof that everything is already right. It is about living the end state now, feeling as if it already is, acting as if it already is. This is the vibration that silently alters future probabilities. It is not about manipulating the universe, but about holding the right field with thoughts that vibrate the end, not the absence. The right thought is not hopeful. It is inevitable. It does not ask, will it be? It affirms, it is now. And when you live in this certainty, the universe responds, because you're no longer waiting for the path to appear. You have become the path.